Hello, everyone, and welcome to my talk on offensive security tools, providing value with the C2 matrix. My name is Jorge Orchilles, and I'm so excited to be here. First off, I have to thank Santa. Santa called me, he invited me up to the North Pole, and I'm originally from Venezuela, which is a Caribbean country. It's generally very warm. I now live in Miami, which is still very warm, about 90, 95 degrees Fahrenheit every day. And I came up with very short notice, didn't even have time to get the right clothes. So you see me here wearing our trademark unicorn shirts here, very purple, because I'm bringing a lot of purple over to Santa this holiday season. I know it's all about the red and green, but I'm all about the purple. So let's get to it. Who am I? My name is Jorge Orchilles. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Site, and I've been doing offensive security for a number of years. I led the offensive security team at Citigroup for 10 of those years. Before then, I was a system admin, and I wrote a book on Windows 7, an operating system you should not be using today. And when I finished with doing system admin stuff, I worked in a security operations center. Then I went to the dark side to work on the offensive side. And I started doing vulnerability assessment, then built out a penetration testing team, then a red team, and then a purple team function, which is what we're going to talk about today. So evolution of offensive security. This is really how I personally went through this journey in the last 10 or so years. I've also talked to a lot of people, as I'm a SANS instructor as well. So I get to talk to a lot of people that are building out these offensive security programs, and more or less they go something like this. You start with vulnerability scanning, where you run a Nessus or a Rapid7 against a number of IPs and web apps. Then you get this really long report. After that, you have someone that goes through that report. That's called the vulnerability assessment. You do risk rating. I did a lot of work with that. It was part of the Common Vulnerability Scoring System Working Group. So we released version 3 and 3.1, which is the current. And then we got to a point where we were exploiting vulnerabilities. That was a lot of fun. That was pen testing. And then we noticed that you don't just test technology, but you test people and process. And there we built out the red team. From the red team, we realized that doing all these zero knowledge engagements all the time weren't bringing the most value because a lot of things weren't being fixed. So we built out a purple team function. And then lastly, we realized that individual TTPs by themselves don't really say much. You really have to create attack chains. And then that's when we started doing adversary emulation. So anything I reference, you'll see links here. So this was a blog post I did on that journey if you want to read a little bit more about it. So offensive security was always and should always be about providing value, right? Every assessment you do has a number of different objectives. You have a scope, you have a rules of engagement. But at the end of the day, the reason that you were hired, whether you're an internal team or a consultant, was to bring value. Sure, some of you were hired to check off that box, right? That compliance, but you're still providing some value. So something that occurred to us about 6 years ago was exploitation is very valuable. We like doing exploitation. We like finding O days and reporting them to vendors responsibly, maybe through bug bounty, make a little money. And those get fixed, and those vulnerabilities are fixed, and that's awesome. Super valuable, super fun. But I remember clearly all the way back in 2011, I was taking SANS Security 560 with Ed Scotus. It was CTF day, day 6. And I was just trying to exploit everything. But in that CTF, you really only exploit maybe one host. And that's when Ed saw that I was stuck, and he came by and he told me, it is not all about exploitation. And I looked at him and I kept trying to metasploit my way through the CTF. But then I realized, and it took me a couple of years to realize, that indeed it's not all about exploitation. Exploitation is important, but there's more to that. A perfect example is MITRE. I'm sure all of you have heard of MITRE. MITRE has CVE, common vulnerabilities and exposures, right? If you find a vulnerability, awesome, good job, report it. You either gain your CVE or generally you tell the vendor that has this vulnerability will create a patch and then they create a CVE. Awesome. That's its own portal, cve.mitre.org. But then they have this other thing that I'm sure you've heard about called ATT&CK, Adversary Tactics, Techniques, and Common Knowledge. And this is more about behaviors. The best way I can show you this is that CVEs, we get thousands of them every year. While in ATT&CK, we have techniques and sub-techniques. And I actually counted them. There's 525 techniques and sub-techniques and the 12 or so tactics. And if you do a search for the word exploit, it's only referenced in 9 of these techniques and sub-techniques, meaning that there's a lot of adversary behavior that does not rely on exploits. Another method of focusing and giving back and really giving value in your assessments is working under an assumed breach method or mode. And Santa told me, I was talking to him when I got up here, they operate in an assumed breach mode. They know they're going to be compromised, right? If you've been to any of the KringleCons, you know very well what can happen, right? And many organizations are starting to work under this mode as well. And pretty much what that means is that everyone will be compromised at some point, right? That's just the way it is, right? It's gonna happen. Maybe a patch is not gonna be applied in time and it's gonna get exploited. Maybe a user will fall for a phishing campaign, but it's gonna happen, right? So that mode is very important. It's very important when we do our assessments as well, because what happens next is what matters. Once someone gets in, what happens next? Will you get detected? So one of the methods that we found to bring the most value while doing offensive security is through purple team. And these, unlike red team engagements, are full knowledge exercises. And a purple team is actually a virtual team. It's a functional team where you have multiple teams working together. You have your cyber threat intelligence team, you have your red team, and you have your blue team. We've released a free public framework for this called Purple Team Exercise Framework. The link is down there. And of course, you can go and download it right now and implement this. But let me tell you why. First of all, cyber threat intelligence is very important for your organization. Some organizations have internal cyber threat intelligence teams, some have external, but many people think that this is only about indicators of compromise. Oh, this bad domain or this bad IP, but it's not. It's a lot more. It's more about adversary behaviors, what we want to talk about. So a cyber threat intelligence analyst working for a company or as a vendor or a consultant needs to understand the target organization. They need to identify adversaries that are likely to attack that organization, then gather threat intelligence about that particular adversary, extract the TTPs, those are tactics, techniques, and procedures, or also the adversary behaviors, if you will. Then they analyze and organize this information, they create a plan, and then you emulate the adversary. Now, you can do this from a red team perspective where the blue team doesn't know about it, or you can do it as a purple team. Now, who's the red team? They are the offensive team, right? And red team, I love the Red Team Journal. They're back. Follow them on Twitter, redteamjournal.com. They have the definition that red teaming is the practice of looking at a problem or situation from the perspective of an adversary. But really what we're doing is we're testing, measuring, and improving, right, business value, people, process, and technology. Not only vulnerabilities in tech, but vulnerabilities in people and processes as well. Who are the blue team? Well, the blue team are the defenders. Now, you don't go and look up blue team and find a job as a blue teamer. Blue teamers are a lot of people, right? There's a lot of defenders, from security operations analysts to managed security service providers, detection engineers, incident response, forensics, right? There's a lot of people that fall into this, and they're great. We love our defenders. They do a great job, and their main role is to detect and respond to attacks. Now, so far, hopefully I've talked enough saying that prevention does not mean detection, right? At some point, someone might get in, you didn't prevent them, now you have to detect them. How do you detect them? Well, in the simplest way possible, you need to log them, log what they're doing, see what they're doing, get relevant logs, start locally, and then send those logs somewhere. Then, based on the logs that you receive, create alerts and alert people, follow a process, and then get to the response phase where you actually respond and you have processed people and automation for them. So what's the flow of a purple team engagement? First, you all get together. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. Read the framework if you want to know more about that. But once everyone's together, either on the same room or all through video like we are now, cyber threat intelligence presents the adversary, presents the tactics, techniques, and procedures and technical details. Then the attendees have a tabletop discussion. This is a great discussion because you hear everyone's assumptions of things that will work and won't work. And then you have the red team actually emulate those TTPs, actually run those TTPs in the target environment while the blue team watches. Then the blue team goes, they follow their process. They detect and respond to these TTPs, all while sharing their screen. So now the red team is learning how the blue team works. It's fantastic. Then you document your results. What worked? What didn't work? If you can, perform adjustments, then repeat the TTPs, and then go through and do this over and over. You can do this in a 1 hour, 2 hour exercise or a week-long exercise. Of course, to emulate adversaries, you need tools. That's where the C2 matrix comes in. C2 matrix is a collaborative evaluation. It's really a Google sheet, but there's a website called the c2matrix.com. There are 60 command and control frameworks that you have available for you. There's a lot that are free. There's some that are paid for. And there's also a how-to that teaches you how to use any of these frameworks. And what we've done, along with collaboration with SANS and Ryan O'Grady, shout out to Ryan, is we have created a virtual machine called the SANS Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition. And the goal of this is to lower the learning curve for you. Instead of having to install any of these, you get straight to testing. It comes with 8 of these C2s already pre-installed. And then you can just use them. You can follow the how-tos on how-to.thec2matrix.com. You can set up things like Empire or Posh C2 or Covenant or Merlin or Sliver, all these awesome C2s. And then you have to provide value. So this is an example of a 6-week-long purple team exercise. We were actually hired to do the cyber threat intelligence, red team, blue team, and exercise coordinator. So we brought a big team in to this organization. And we did an assume breach scenario. That means that we ran everything internally. We did not focus on phishing or exploitation. We started on a system. And we emulated a variety of different APTs, from Russian to Iranian to Chinese. And we tracked this. We used vector, and that's what you can see here on the right. And as you can see, the results weren't too pretty. We tested 65 unique TTPs, and only 3 of those were detected, while 1 of them was blocked. All of the others were not detected, meaning that if this adversary would have gone and targeted this organization, they would have achieved their objective without being detected. After these 6 weeks, we didn't spend any money on technology. We only tuned what was already available. We enabled telemetry through Sysmon. We created logics and alerts on their SIM. And at the end, we didn't get to 100, right? This isn't bingo, but we had 64% detection rate. That means that if any of these adversaries would have gotten onto this target system, they would have been detected and responded to before they reached their objective. And we did that using a tool called Vector. Vector is free, and it's for tracking and measuring and showing value of your red and purple team engagements. Highly encourage you to check that out. It also comes as part of the SANS Slingshot C2 Matrix Edition. So you get 8 command and control frameworks, and you also get Vector for tracking that. Also use the how-to, because there we show you how to use everything. So with that, I want to thank you all. I hope you have an amazing holiday hack challenge. 2020, we're going to wrap up this year in the best way possible. And again, thank you to Santa for inviting me up here. Thank you for giving me a warm room to present from, because it is cold out there in the North Pole. So again, thank you. Feedback is always welcome, and I hope you have a great holiday season. We'll catch you soon.
Ho, 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 ho.